Hello. Ha! Hello. Hey guys. It's a little bit of technology mix up. I hope everyone's doing all right. Happy Friday. So today we are going to talk about mastering milk paint on flat surfaces. Um, I would My girlfriend was visiting around top and sent me a picture of this secretary. And so it was over $4,000. So we could do that. We could totally do this finish. I'm going to teach you guys how to do it and take out the kind of mystery behind milk paint on a flat surface. It's totally doable. You can really get some great crackle, and we'll get up and close so you guys can see the finish on it. And we'll go over that. But before we get started, today the code for the live for today, Finish Friday, it's Finish Friday 314, and it's 20% off all of the products that I use for this particular finish, which is awesome. So, and then like, follow, comment, and share, and you'll be entered for a drawing for free product. So who doesn't love free product? I do. It's expensive. So yeah, like sign up, invite your friends, like it, and comment. Hi, Julie. So glad you could join me. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I'm here in South Florida, so it is warm. Wherever you are, I hope you're enjoying the cooler weather. So we're going to get started. I know we're short on time. I'm excited to be here. My name's Lyonella Cook. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. And we will talk about a really cool finish. And I'll show you afterwards. We'll take a field trip over there. Okay, so I'm going to turn you down. You're not here to see me. You are here to see a finish. So let's do this. All right. I got a new camera stand. I've broken every single one of them. So I want you to go ahead. You're going to pull all your product together. We are going to need, if you're starting with raw wood, lucky you, you found a piece with raw wood. If you haven't, one step is great. Make sure you just clean off that surface really well. And if it's a lacquered finish or anything, you need to scuff it up and give it tooth. But for today, we are using Amy Howard's gel stain in English walnut. You will need gesso, Amy Howard's cracked gesso. So for me, because I have a studio, I like to put everything in containers, and it's super easy to store and keep fresh and from tipping over. So you will need cracked gesso. You, of course, will need your clean slate. That's actually utmost important, because otherwise your finish can fail and completely fall off. And that's not what we want. For colors today, so we have the cracked gesso. We're going to use Sunday Supper. And I'm going to show you how to make a really cute, like taupey brown. So Sunday Supper. And you want to use, because we're using that color wheel, guys. I'm all about the color wheel. We're going to use Praying Wife. If you do not have Praying Wife in stock, or you run out in the middle of your piece, Provincial Yellow pigment is really good. And I'm going to show you how to use that pigment with your milk paints correctly. We've got Nor. We will need to be using Nor. If you need pigments, we've got the Nor milk paint, or the Nor pigments. Look at those cute new bottles. And Provincial Yellow, if you don't have that Praying Wife on hand. We will need light wax, Furniture Tonic, and I'm going to show you a new technique that's really cool. I think you guys will really appreciate. We will need Antiquing Glaze, and we cannot forget what makes everything look so old. This is my dust box, especially when I'm doing drawers or like doors, when I take them off. It's nice to kind of keep it all in one place. Is Dust of Ages. Okay. So we want to use separate brushes here too. My suggestion for you guys, if you do a lot of milk paint like I do, I have a designated brush that is a gesso brush. They get super gunked out, and sometimes it's difficult to get that out of your brushes. It's pretty rough on them. Milk paint brushes, I keep separate. You've got a wax brush and your Dust of Ages brush. I have a designated Dust of Ages brush. It looks like a dusty old brush, and it just usually stays in that box. So It's easier if you keep your tools separate for separate projects, write it on there, name them. You will need a steel sponge and stir sticks. I'm going to use gloves today, especially because we're going to deal with, it's called slacking. We'll be slacking pigment, so I can teach you how to correctly incorporate pigments into an existing color that's already has wet. So you want to add wet to wet, dry to dry, wet to wet, and that's what we're learning. All right, so first thing we're going to start with a piece of wood. If you guys have painted pieces, I recommend you can use one step over it as your base color. Remember, that's the color that you're going to see peeking through that paint because we're using gesso. So pick that color. If you want that wood, go for Windsor or Brown Derby. That's a great base color. If it's a non-wood finish or if it already has paint on it and you don't want to strip it, and it kind of will add interest as you chip away the layers. So, but here we're starting with that plain wood. Here we go. Now you can change the depth of your gel stain by adding water. So the thinner you make it, the lighter it'll be, but we want that full blown brown. So we're going to be here. We're going to offload a little bit as I did. Now, you know, if this was a finished piece that we're going to seal with shellac, then go with the grain. But because we really want the wood to absorb the stain, I actually go back and forth with this and then finish it off going with the grain. So it really forces the gel stain into the wood. So almost like a cross hatching, really forcing it in and then finishing it off with the grain of the wood. Especially like if there's little dents in there, you want to really make sure you're getting good coverage. You don't want brand new wood just peeking through your finish because then it doesn't look legit. So if we're just doing this super fast, also I recommend you take a rag and we're just going to gently take off that extra, just kind of blending it in. If you wanted to go a step further, and I've done this and you guys will see in the next coming projects, you want to really make this look like an old piece, you could take Kensington black and go along the edges or into the divots into that with the Kensington black. And now you've really started to make this piece of wood look old, adding depth. That's what we want to do. So nice and easy, just blend it all in. And there's your base. So this is live TV, so we're gonna keep going. Here is cracked gesso. I'm gonna show you to mix cracked gesso. This is so cool. I can't wait till next week. We're gonna do some carved pieces and I'm gonna show you the secret to making that crazy, crazy crack with the cracked gesso. I know the elusive cracked gesso. We are gonna crack the code and I'm gonna show you how to do it. So here, the cracked gesso, it's a 1-to-1. 1-to-1 ratio. And the things that, you know, I hate to say it's just a standard 1-to-1 because it's not. For this right now, it is a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're just going to add it in. Now, milk paints and gesso, you really want to let these paints sit. So I make them overnight. I let it sit if I can, but if you can't, it's all right. Making a mess. And you see how difficult this is to really incorporate. So I'm going to show you what I use. Here we go. I use this guy. And if you're like me and you're going back and forth, making so many colors and making gesso, you want to have a cup of water. So after you mix your gesso, you just stick it in that water and you don't have residue on your turn. So like that. Awesome. Then take it off, tap it, stick it in the water. And I would try to keep that some kind of warm water, and look, it just takes it right off whatever you're working with. So otherwise, gesso is kind of a pain to get off your tools. So as you see, there's foam. We don't want to paint with foam. We want to scoop that off. What's nice about the emulsion blender is you're able to scoop. You don't want to paint with this. This is going to leave bubbles in your finish. This is going to prevent it from cracking correctly. So don't paint with this. You're going to scoop it all off into a bowl, just like so. Okay, or you can use a cheesecloth too, if you have a cheesecloth. If you don't, let it sit for about 15 minutes, come back to it, and it's like perfectly layered. You could take it right off. All right, so here we have our stain, cracked gesso. And you're gonna think this is so light. You're gonna be like, oh my goodness, it's not gonna have coverage. It's not gonna crack. I promise you, it will absolutely crack. All right, and I wanna show you a little experiment because I'm all about experiments. So this side, we're not gonna use any wax. We're not gonna use any candle to go under this gesso. So it's just gonna naturally do its own thing. What I am gonna do, as soon as I find my candle here, you could use a candle, you could use wax. I will warn you, if you heat this gesso to dry it out, you're going to melt your candle. Same thing with the wax, you're going to make it run. So just be mindful of where you put it. So let's pretend this is a drawer front. Especially for a flat piece of wood, I'm going to show it to you. We're pretending that's a drawer front. We want everywhere. We want the edges. We want that oval eye track. Maybe there was a handle here. So maybe a little bit of a handle, but really, where's all that distressing going to come? You have to come up with an imagination of thinking about where these flat pieces were touched. So maybe one side is where, they pushed in continually. So maybe one side is more distressed than the other side. So here, maybe there was a desk on this side and they kept pushing. I'm thinking about where every time it was hit. So I'm still keeping that oval eye track, but I'm deciding where I want that to happen. Now we'll go ahead and we'll finish. And you remember, you can use wax with this too, or you can use a candle. It's up to you. Now where you put that candle, this is going to pop off immediately. Just a heads up. Everything else will be with the antiquing glaze and any other manual. So we're going to hit this with the hairdryer. Again, be mindful of where you have that wax or you have the light wax. It will melt with heat. And for sake of time, guys, I kept you in mind. I moved ahead. So this will dry at the end and we'll look at it again. But again, ta-da, magic, television. So as you can see, I've already have some cracking. And that is where I applied the light wax. Do you see what's happening here? We're having lifting. So there is a good chance we're going to have a lot of action right there, which is so exciting. Okay. So this flat piece of wood, you're like, oh, what are we going to do with it? We got to add depth. So right now I'm going to teach you guys two colors. We are going to start with your base color. And eventually I'm going to show you guys how to do like 3 colors and 2 layers of gesso. And your piece will look like it came from the 17th century. It cracks so much. I can't wait to show you next week. I'm so excited. Okay. All right. So here is our mix. Sunday supper. Now I want you to see this color. What color is that? It is almost a purple, right? But it's not. It's not a purple, right? But what color, when you mix it with yellow, what do you get? Purple and yellow make brown. So we're going to go 2 parts Sunday supper to 1 part praying wave. And so here, look at this. This is so cool. This is so much fun. This is fun to do with your kids at home. Just let them mix. They come up with the craziest colors. So that's your color. Isn't that beautiful? Now, if you want to darken it or lighten it, you want to lighten this, you add white pigment. If you want to darken it, you're going to add a brown to muddy it. You're going to add a black to darken it. So you can, there's so many colors you can do from this color. Okay, so that's that. That's your number 1 color. Now we're going to mix up some Nor. Now, if you're like me, I like a really dark black. I love a true black. And as many of you know who have painted, my old world finishing gals, you know, this is black, but it really does want to dry a little bit more light. So I love a true black, and we're going to do a true black. As soon as I find another cup. Woo. Okay. So we have to slack the pigment. And when I say slacking the pigment, especially when it comes to blacks and reds and blues, you want to slack pigment. So we are going to add about, it looks like a 1/4 of a cup here of water, maybe just under a 1/4 of a cup. And go ahead and mix your black milk paint, Nor milk paint. It's a 1-to-1. And so we're going to mix that up. And you're going to look at it and you'll be like, Leah, that's black. Or, well, it's kind of, but is it kind of charcoal too? But we want like a super deep true black. That's cool. Okay. So that's this. Now we are going to take our pigment powder and we're going to add it in to this water. So I did 2 parts to it's about even mix. And you see, sorry, making a mess. Do you see how it doesn't actually really want to mix? So this is what happens in your milk paint. So what I would recommend is you let this sit for a little bit. Just let it sit. Let it completely absorb into the water. The longer you let your paints just kind of molecularly dissolve in the water, the truer the pigment will be. So like you might make a paint and you're like, oh wow, it's just not dark enough. But 2 hours later, your pigment, your paint's super dark. So, and this is why you want to be careful when you're coloring, because especially with pigments, you can really turn your milk paint very dark very quickly. So adding a little bit at a time, we are going to, now I want you to see the difference. Look at that. Now we're getting that really pretty true black. Awesome. And you can decide you want a little bit more. Now, what I want you to be mindful of is the more water you add to your milk paint, the more you dilute it. You thin the paint. So if you need to fatten the paint back up, go ahead and add some more Nor. And then just be mindful. And then make this more concentrated if you want it to be darker. Less water, more concentrated. Okay? Because the more water you add, the thinner, the leaner you're going to make your paint. For any of those who are into oil painting, you understand this concept. So really wanting a nice true black. And it, that's up to you how dark you want it. Since I have already mixed all our paints, we are good to go. So here we go. All right. So our first color is going to be that Sunday supper. And so after your paints have sat a while, this is what you end up with. So you're like, oh my gosh, all I see is yellow. But that's not true. So take your emulsion blender and you can just, usually it'll break up pretty easy, or you turn it on and. All right. So I want you to see the difference from a pigment to the actual wet color. Got it? And this is where you have to think, this is what it's going to be. This is what you're seeing. This is what, just remind yourself that, because sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, this is not the color I wanted. So again, you could do your wax resist method. You could use your light wax. Let's do the light wax. I use this a lot. Okay. And so to do that wax resist, you're just going to places where you want to add some interest. Think about the subject that you're painting. If it was a secretary, maybe it was slammed continually here, here, here again. So we're going to have to add uniqueness to a piece. The function of the piece is what you have to keep in mind. Yeah, there's no ornate carvings, but you're going to add interest by where you're going to antique this and where it will be touched. The colors will add intrigue. So that is key to making a flat piece of milk paint. All right, so here we go. We are going to just go over and go ahead and have full coverage. You don't want holidays because you want it to look original. So you really need to just complete coverage. Don't try to faux it because it's going to look faux. Complete coverage. Awesome. And what's nice is once you do the gesso, this really starts to just dry so much faster. So we're going to go ahead. Sorry, guys, forgive the dryer. All right. So this is so fun. Look at that already. Do you see that? That is so cool. Okay. Again, this is not the top color. We have full coverage. It's not the best coverage, but again, this is going to get pulled back. So, if you decide you want to do 2 layers, don't make your paint so thick. Remember, we are trying to crack it. So the thicker you make the paint, the more antiquing glaze you're going to have to use and the more muscle you're going to have to use. And when you start doing that, you really start manipulating the paint too much that it does look a little contrived. I hate that word, but I know. But try to keep your milk paints. I know it's hard for some of us who have come from one step or have come from other latex or acrylic paints. We're so used to that thickness. But this, you really got to look at it like it's a watercolor. And the more you practice, I promise the better you're going to get at it. So again, we could go to the wax resist or we could do the light wax resist, and we'll do that because we're going to stay with all of Amy's products. So, which are fantastic because I don't have time to do all these paints and make them. So these are like just amazing colors and great coverage and easy. Okay, maybe just a little. Boop. Okay, now we are going to move on to our black. And this is the scary part, I know, because it's so dark. Black is one of the harder finishes to do in milk paint. I think also white is a hard finish in the milk paint. So if you are killing it in the white, bravo, because that's a tough one. I'm going to add a little bit of just what's left of this pigment into my pre-existing. I really want a dark black. And I'll show you how to make it even darker, which is fun. So here we are. And we're just going to we want full coverage with this one. I know. Complete, really good, full coverage because this is where we're going to be taking off all those colors. And, good. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to let this dry. And one more time, I'm going to dry this off. And this will be the last time you have to hear this thing. I'm sorry. All right, guys. That's enough. I can't stand that. If what I really would love for you to do is I wait every day a minimum of 6 to 8 hours in between finishes or between colors, just allowing it to completely dry. Now, the gesso, I don't. The gesso is where I'm going to show you how to manipulate that to get that crazy crack without craculure and all that nonsense. So, but anyway, so here we are. If you use the wax, what you can do before you start, if you use a candle wax, you can go ahead and just preemptively pick out where you put it. And if you used the light wax, you don't have to do this nonsense. Go ahead and pre-wet your sponge. And we are going to use some antiquing glaze. I'm going to use my bucket since I'm done with it. We're going to shake it up. This stuff is non-toxic, not going to hurt your hands. So don't worry. Okay, here we go. So into the bowl we go. All right. Now, again, I want you to imagine, let's keep this the drawer front and we'll keep it this way. Top, top, top. Constantly pushed in, constantly pushed in. There's a knob there. They're pushing hand, complete hand pushing drawer in. Use your hip to close the door. Maybe knead the drawer a couple times, so we're going to hit all these edges. Don't go overboard. But if you do, not to worry. You have all your pigments already here. You can recover from that. So here we go. And when you do it, I have to actually say this to myself while I'm doing it. Like, not in this, like all over. The initial passes everywhere, not just one place. And don't go in a row. I have to say that to myself. Move, 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 move. And then you rinse out your sponge. Let that sit for a minute. What that's going to do is reactivate that milk paint. And then we'll be able to come back over it. And then it's a hit drag motion. And you're trying to get to that layer below. And then where that wax is, look, it comes right out. For these really crusty finishes, for a nice cohesive finish, like that hutch I did over there, guys, that you want to get the moisture off of it. You don't want it to sit too long, but for these crusty little finishes, it doesn't really matter. We want it to crack the paint. We want it to sit there. We want it to be just naturally corroding itself. So maybe the handle here. Hit drag. And again, oh, I'm sorry, I'm shaking you guys. Woo! It's a little muscle. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. I got to look at it my way for a sec. All right, I got to see what's under here. Now, while it's still moist, you can take a blade. You can come through and just pull off a little bit. Okay. Maybe scuff up where that drawer knob would have been. Maybe a little bit more on one side where it was constantly pushed in, or some little kids were touching it with dirty hands, like in my house. Okay. And you just let it. All right. So believe this or not, I like this. I'm actually really happy how this turned out. And it's like, oh, it looks so flat, but now we're gonna add some fun to it. So while we let this dry somewhat naturally, I might have to hit it with the hairdryer again. We're gonna talk about some other stuff. So happy Easter for those getting ready for Easter in your Lent. Eggs are too expensive, so I'm converting this into something else. We're going to use a little bit of this black pigment. we are also going to use some of that brown we made. Okay. And we are going to use Furniture Tonic. So that's my control. This is what I'm going to use to liven up this paint. Furniture Tonic has, I want to say it's walnut in it, part of it. And I used it on this piece too, which I will show you guys. But you can use this for adding, we're going to add a little color to it. I'm looking for more spoons. Okay. So if we want it darker, we still haven't achieved as dark as we'd like. Take some pigment. We're going to put it in the side. And then you're going to use some of that oil to make a glaze. As I make a giant mess. Okay. And we're not going to use a ton of this. Do not dump this onto your furniture. You will ruin it. What I want you to do is an actual artist brush, but we're going to use the small brush for right now. So, and then really offloading. I want you to really make sure we offload because you're not going to kill your piece. Remember, this is black. We want it more black. All right. So before we did that, we got it all ready. Now we're going to try to dry this up one more time. Sorry. I also want you to know if you are force drying this, there is a chance that you will make this paint lift. So because this is a crusty finish, I'm okay with that. Typically, if this is a more solid, more elevated piece, then no, you don't want that to happen. So you're going to have to let these pieces dry naturally. Oh, great. Other brush in here. Okay. And so while we do that, we need to do a wax finish. So when you use oils, you want to do it after you do the wax. And the reason why is it could penetrate too much. So I would recommend doing your wax first. So we're going to do a little bit of light wax. I know this is a dark brush. Huh? Okay. Offload a bit. And then just gently going over. Don't overwax your pieces. Not helping them. It doesn't help anything. Okay. So see, it's a lot lighter than I have originally anticipated. Do you guys see that? So now we will go back with some oils and we will just a junky brush. You can add in maybe some of the spots where it was touched a lot. You know, for hand oil tends to do this. And just let it sink in for a few minutes and see what colors are being brought out. But, you know, I wouldn't do it all over the place. Just very lightly adding in some of the Furniture Tonic. And then you could also go ahead and shadow some of this black. Offload some of that. Shadow in with the black. Maybe where they're touched more. And you could do the dark antique wax too. I don't find it, I mean, sometimes it could give a little bit more of a rich to the black, but it also can make the white look super dirty, but that's up to you. It's a preference, but they both look phenomenal. So we're just adding this in and then we're just going to rub a little. So I would let this tonic sit for a couple hours on this milk paint. And then you can come back and just like you would with the wax, just creating a really pretty sheen on it because it will buff just like that. So there, now we've started to add that. Now we're going to take it a step further. We're going to add some dust of ages. Now it's not appropriate for every black piece. It's not appropriate for every old piece, but I love dust of ages. And I think with these old crusty finishes, it just looks spectacular. So we are going to add in a little bit of dust of ages. Here we go. Ready? So it's just tap, tap, maybe around the corners. And you still want to let everything dry. We're doing it fast because of it's time consuming. And you're just going to let it sit for a minute. Let it sit. I let my dust of ages sit for like actually a day. I do let it sit for a day. And then you're going to just come through. Now you don't want to get rid of all the black you just really worked so hard for, but the places where there's holes or divots is a great space to get your finish. Okay. And then I would wait a little bit. You could also come back and then buff it again. We're going to go over and we're going to take a peek at the piece I did. Field trip. Ooh, sorry guys. So here is the piece. And then here is some cracking. Can you guys see that? All the way up. Isn't that beautiful? You see that? And then coming all the way up. So I imagine this piece was hit a bunch of times trying to get it in the door, or maybe moved around a bit. So in the corners. And here I imagined that from constantly touching and from constantly pushing it in, this was the finish on the doors. Again, here on the edges, all along the edges. So I'm creating interest and of where it was touched, how it was used, how it was manipulated. I kept the inside the same. I had to cut a lot of new cubby holes that were missing. And then I revived the inside with Furniture Tonic, which came out pretty cool. Replaced my chains. Ooh, I got a plant in there. And then I'll show you the inside and then we're done. You guys did great. Here we go. So, yep. See where it would have been touched continually every time they opened it, grabbed it from the sides. So just because it's flat doesn't mean it can't be milk painted. Milk paint is perfect for everything. I love milk paint. Not everything, but you know. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to comment down below. Make sure you sign up to win in the drawing. All some free product today, 20% off all Finish Friday items. I'm so happy to join you. Thank you so much for being so patient. And I hope you have a fantastic Friday. Thanks, guys. Bye now.